Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. If you watch the evening news, you'd probably think the entire healthcare system is literally just overcrowded emergency rooms, right? Well, you are definitely not alone in thinking that. Today, we're unpacking a really powerful, completely paradigm-shifting analysis presented by Dr. Christophe DeLong and Conexa Formation. It's called Medicine Has Lost Its Voice, and it basically explores how the public narrative around healthcare has been completely hijacked. It's this absolutely fascinating deep dive into media mechanics, public perception, and the day-to-day medical reality that just flies totally under the radar. Okay, so let's dive right into the data here, because it reveals a pretty shocking imbalance. Get this, a tiny 2% sliver of the medical profession, emergency doctors, has somehow managed to monopolize 80% of the media space. Meanwhile, the other 98% of doctors are left fighting over a measly 20% of the spotlight. I mean, just think about the gravity of that for a second. It's a staggering statistical hook that completely frames and honestly skews how we view the ongoing health crisis. The entire conversation is being totally dominated by a vocal minority. To really put that 2% into perspective, there are roughly 100,000 general practitioners in France. That is 22 times more than the roughly 4,500 emergency doctors in the system. 22 times. And yet those 100,000 doctors who are managing the vast, overwhelming majority of the population's health day in and day out only get about 10 to 15% of the speaking time in the media. The gap between who does the bulk of the heavy lifting and who actually gets the microphone is just massive. All right, moving on to Section 1, the myth of the homogeneous urgentist. Here's where we need to deconstruct the public's illusion of the emergency room. So, with all this media focus on the AR, you'd naturally assume that the urgentist, the emergency doctor, is this highly standardized, uniform specialty. But as Dr. DeLong and Conexa Formation point out, we really need to shatter that illusion. The reality behind those hospital doors is way different from the cohesive unit we see on TV. What we actually have is what the source calls a harlequin of statuses. Believe it or not, the actual exclusive emergency specialty diploma was only created back in 2017. Today, only 10 to 15% of ER staff actually hold it. The rest of them, the other 85 to 90%, make up a really heterogeneous mosaic. You've got the anciens, older generalists who are slowly getting pushed out by reforms. You have the DSC, who often possess a dual medical culture like anesthesia and emergency. You've got the intérimaires, or temporary workers, who are highly paid but kind of break the continuity of patient care. And finally, there's this fourth group that we absolutely have to talk about. Yeah, this is a huge, unmediatized taboo from the source analysis, the Padgeway group. That stands for foreign trained doctors. These professionals are quietly doing the absolute heavy lifting in the system right now. They're staffing anywhere from 30 to 60% of the emergency shifts in peripheral, rural hospitals across the country. They are highly competent, super dedicated professionals, yet they are systematically kept in really precarious employment conditions. It completely blows up that myth of the unified, standardized ER savior we're so used to seeing on the news. Which brings us to Section 2, the dictatorship of the visual. Let's look at exactly why emergency doctors dominate the conversation so much. Look, the chaotic, visible drama of the emergency room is just incredibly telegenic. A stretcher rolling down a crowded hospital hallway surrounded by rushing staff, that creates this immediate, visceral image of a crisis that viewers instantly understand. But compare that with a diabetologist, a psychiatrist, or a neurologist. A specialist might spend 6 painstaking months carefully, intellectually stabilizing a really complex, critically ill patient. But that work is invisible, it's cerebral, it doesn't look like drama on a screen, so it simply doesn't make the evening news. The underlying truth here is that drama always wins the ratings. Intellectual medical work just cannot compete visually with flashing ambulance lights. Dr. DeLong and Conexa Formation use this brilliant, really powerful metaphor to explain the dynamic. The doorman. Because emergency departments act as the entry point, literally the front door to the hospital, they've convinced the media and the public that they own the entire house. Simply because they control who enters, they control the narrative. Meanwhile, the true owners of deep medical knowledge are working quietly upstairs, and their voices and expertise get completely drowned out by all the noise and congestion at the entrance. And this leads to what the analysis terms the silent humiliation. We are currently witnessing a total reversal of the traditional medical hierarchy. These highly specialized doctors, the ones who profoundly understand the complex pathophysiology of diseases, now have to ask permission from emergency department logistics managers just to hospitalize their own patients. I mean, let that sink in for a second. Profound, specialized scientific knowledge has been totally subordinated to the sheer management of patient flow and bed availability. It's literally a logistical tail wagging a highly scientific dog. Okay, on to Section 3,
The invisible infantry, liberal medicine. If the ER is just the noisy front door, who is actually holding the rest of the building together?
So the crucial point here is that these liberal doctors, the massive network of community-based GPs and private practice specialists, are the actual unseen architects of the healthcare system. They act as the true shield. They manage huge volumes of preventative care, routine pediatric vaccinations, chronic diabetes, complex geriatric care. They are the ones keeping millions of people out of the hospital in the first place. While the ER is often an anonymous, one-shot encounter, liberal medicine is about a 20-year companionship. It's about knowing a patient's entire medical and family history, but they suffer from a crippling statistical silence. Why? Because there are no television cameras in a GP's packed waiting room at 8 o'clock at night.
Because of this invisibility, the source points out a profound injustice in how these professionals are framed in the public eye. On one side, the emergency doctor is relentlessly portrayed as this selfless, exhausted hero constantly saving lives under the neon lights. On the flip side, the liberal doctor is implicitly caricatured as a nanti, which is basically a French term for a privileged business person seeking comfort and profit over patient care. The media continuously glorifies the anonymity of the ER while entirely ignoring the lifelong foundational loyalty of the community doctor.
Section 4, the trap of the strike. This media imbalance creates a really fascinating mechanical trap for liberal doctors. When emergency rooms go on strike, it looks exactly like what the media loves to film. Stretchers piling up, people running, total chaos in the halls. It generates immediate, visceral public empathy. But when liberal doctors strike, you get an empty waiting room, a closed door, and a generic answering machine message. And as the authors of the analysis bluntly state, you cannot film a void. Because there's no visual drama, the public just assumes the liberal doctor is off playing golf or taking a vacation, completely missing the whole point of the protest. And the mechanics get even more twisted when we look at the timeline of consequences. If an ER doctor stops working for just 1 hour, the vital risk is immediate and super obvious. But if a liberal doctor strikes for 3 days, their patients inevitably spill over into the emergency room. The ER saturates, and guess where the news cameras go? Straight back to the hospital to film the ER crisis. The tragic long-term consequences of the liberal strike, like unmanaged hypertension leading to a stroke or a cancer diagnosis delayed by 6 months, are entirely separated from the event itself. The public literally never connects the delayed tragedy back to the absence of the community doctor. To really anchor this concept, the source offers this incredibly evocative metaphor. Liberal medicine is like oxygen, invisible as long as it's there. We only realize its vital importance when we begin to suffocate. Wow, that perfectly encapsulates their foundational, vital, yet entirely uncelebrated role in keeping the entire healthcare system from collapsing inward. Without them, the whole structure just falls apart. Finally, Section 5, restoring the balance. Recognizing the problem is only the first step. Dr. Christophe DeLong and Kinnick's of Formation conclude their analysis with a clear call to action regarding how we, and the media, fundamentally talk about healthcare. They present this fantastic final juxtaposition. The emergency doctor is the firefighter. When the alarm rings, they are the heroes of the spectacular, short-term moment, pulling you from the immediate flames. But the liberal and specialist doctors, they're the architects laying the bricks day after day. They're the ones actually building your long-term health so you can safely inhabit your body for a lifetime. Both are absolutely necessary for sure, but we have to realize that the foundations and the walls matter just as much as the fire alarm. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought derived from today's explainer. If the architects stop building, what exactly is left for the firefighters to save? It's a huge question that really demands we rethink everything we hear about healthcare in the media. By understanding the dictatorship of the visual, the silent work of the specialists, and the true role of community medicine, we might finally begin to hear the full voice of medicine once again. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll see you in the next explainer.